If there's one thing we've learned in the last few years, it's that the line between athlete and celebrity is getting thinner by the day. And nowhere is that more obvious right now than in the life of Dutch speed skating star Jutta Leerdam, who isn't just an Olympic medalist, but also the fiancée of Jake Paul, one of the most polarizing influencer-turned boxers on the planet. Jake Paul has spent years building a brand on excess and attention. Private jets, mansions, designer clothes, massive pay-per-view deals. His entire image is built around living big and letting everyone see it. For a long time, that lifestyle was just his thing. But now that he's engaged to one of the Netherlands' top winter athletes, the glare of that spotlight is hitting her too. And some people back home are not happy about what they're seeing. Jutta is in Milan, Cortina for the Winter Olympics. Skating for a country where speed skating is almost a religion, she's not some social media novice. She's been a star in her own right for years, winning multiple world titles and taking silver at the 2022 Olympics. In pure sports terms, she's a real deal. But over the last few weeks, instead of the conversation being all about her form, her training, or her chances on the ice, a different storyline has taken center stage. How she got to the games, how she moved around, and what that says about who she's becoming. The whole thing exploded when she posted about her arrival in Italy. While the rest of the Dutch Olympic delegation traveled together, like usual, Jutta chose a different route. She flew into Milan Cortina on a private jet, reportedly with friends, and then headed toward the athletes' village in a private car instead of on the team transport. She didn't hide it, either. She shared snippets on Instagram. The jet, the arrival, the car, and then the classic Olympic moments. Exploring the village, posing in front of the Olympic rings, taking selfies at the site so many athletes dream about their whole lives. On one level, none of that is shocking. Athletes, especially big names, travel privately all the time. Sponsorship schedules and security often make it easier. And taking pictures in front of the Olympic rings is pretty much a rite of passage. But the context mattered here, especially in the Netherlands. Not only did she travel differently from the rest of the team, she had also only just managed to qualify for these Olympics. This wasn't a situation where she was far and away the top choice with no pressure. She squeezed in. That combination, narrow qualification plus luxury entrance, is what really lit the match. Once the photos spread, the reaction in Dutch media was fast and sharp. Commentators and fans started using words like diva and prima donna to describe her behavior. Some argued that her entrance looked less like a focused Olympian arriving for the most important competition in the world, and more like an influencer rolling up to a Fashion Week event. The comparison to Jake Paul's lifestyle was immediate. People made the connection. Private jets, curated content, luxury first. They saw her choices and said, she's starting to act like him. For a lot of Dutch observers, that's where the unease lies. Jake Paul is an entertainer by design. His entire career is built around shock factor, controversy, and pushing the line. That's his lane. But the Dutch Olympic team has long been associated with different values. Discipline, humility, team spirit, and a sense that you're representing something bigger than yourself. Critics are now asking whether Jutta is drifting from one world into the other, from national representative to global influencer, and if she even sees the difference anymore. Some media outlets in the Netherlands have gone further, suggesting she is no longer representing Dutch values the way an Olympic athlete is expected to. They point out that her public image now seems tightly wrapped in social media, branding, and her relationship with Jake Paul, and less in the traditional mold of the Dutch skating star, focused quietly on the ice. To them, she looks more like a global internet figure who happens to skate, rather than a skater who happens to have a big following. The criticism hasn't just come from anonymous commenters or gossip columns. It's also been amplified by former athletes and analysts who know both the sport and the culture around it. Figures like Johan Derksen have spoken on television about her behavior, describing it as diva-like and questioning whether coaches and federation officials should accept it. The thread in those comments is pretty consistent. If the priority is performance, they argue, then this kind of showy entrance and influencer-style branding shouldn't go unchecked. There's also a deeper worry behind their words. When you start to get special privileges, private travel, exceptions to team routines, your own rules about how and when you arrive, it can send a signal that you're different from the rest of the squad. Not different because of results, but different because of your fame. And once that dynamic creeps into a team environment, it can affect everything. Focus, chemistry, how coaches interact with you, even how other athletes feel in comparison. That's what some observers are afraid of right now. That the privileges attached to being Jake Paul's fiancée and being a global brand on social media might begin to chip away at the attitude that made her a world champion in the first place. They're asking whether this Olympic journey is now as much about appearances as it is about performance. At the same time, it's important not to rewrite her resume. Jutta Leerdam didn't become who she is because she got on a private jet with Jake Paul. She was a serial winner long before this relationship was public. She has multiple world championship titles. She stood on an Olympic podium in Beijing with a silver medal around her neck. She's proven again and again that she can deliver when the pressure is on. None of that goes away just because she changed how she traveled or took some photos at the rings. The challenge she faces now is that people are starting to question which direction the scale is tipping. Is she still primarily an athlete who happens to have a big following and a controversial fiancé? Or is she becoming a celebrity who happens to still be competing? That's a subtle but important distinction, especially for a country that prides itself on straightforwardness and hard work in sport. You can also flip the lens here. In 2024, can we really say an Olympic champion doesn't have the right to lean into her platform off the ice? Sponsorship money, social visibility, and a strong personal brand are part of how athletes secure their futures, especially in sports that don't pay NBA or Premier League salaries. When male athletes post their jets, cars, and designer fits, they're often celebrated as icons or living legends. When a woman does it, especially one engaged as someone whose entire name is built on flexing, the reaction can be very different. There's a gender element in this whole conversation that's hard to ignore. If a male speed skater showed up on a private jet, posted some photos of the rings, and then said, "Time to go to work," would he be getting the same diva label? Some people definitely think not. Others argue that in the context of the Dutch team, where modesty has always been part of the culture, anyone, male or female, would have drawn fire for such a public display. Still, the Jake Paul factor makes it impossible to separate the two worlds. When your partner is known for over-the-top entrances, huge flexes, and a constant look-at-me energy online, anything you do that even vaguely fits that pattern gets pulled into his narrative. So now, when Jutta shares a private flight or a luxury arrival, people don't just see Jutta. They see Jake Paul's influence. Former athletes worry this could affect her mindset. They know how small the margins are at the Olympic level. A fraction of a second slower on the ice because your focus is slightly off, or because there's more noise in your head than there used to be, can be the difference between a medal and going home empty-handed. That's why some of them speak so strongly. It's not always hate. Sometimes it's a protective instinct from people who've been there and know how unforgiving that environment is. Where does that leave her right now? She's still in the Olympic Village. She's still training. She's still on the start lists. The Dutch Federation hasn't pulled her, and there's no sign they plan to. Whatever is being said in studios and on comment threads, her job at this moment is exactly what it has always been: to get on the ice and go as fast as humanly possible. What has changed is how closely people are watching everything around her performances. If she skates brilliantly and wins a medal, plenty of voices will say that the private jet, the Instagram posts, and the Jake Paul connection clearly didn't hurt her. Some will even say she used the criticism as fuel. If she falls short of expectations, you already know what the narrative will be. Too distracted, too focused on the lifestyle, not grounded enough in the work. Fair or not, that's the trade-off that comes with this kind of visibility. Once your name is no longer just on result sheets, but also on gossip sites, front pages, and influencer feeds, every choice you make becomes part of a larger story people are eager to interpret. The situation also says a lot about where the Olympics are in 2024. The old image of the pure amateur athlete who disappears back into anonymity after each games is long gone. Today's Olympians, especially decorated ones like Jutta, are brands. They're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. They sign with agents and companies, build merchandise lines, partner with other celebrities. The money is in that crossover space between sport and entertainment. She's not the first to step into that space, and she won't be the last. The question is how well she can balance it. Can she use the platform the relationship, and the attention to amplify her career and still protect the core that made her great? Or does the noise grow so loud that it pulls her away from the thing that actually built all of this in the first place? Right now, Jutta Leerdam is a case study in that balancing act. She's a world champion and an Olympic silver medalist. She's also Jake Paul's fiancée, flying private, and posted her journey for millions of followers. In the Netherlands, some see a proud ambassador who's earned the right to travel however she wants. Others see someone drifting into influencer territory at the worst possible moment. We don't yet know how this will shape her long-term reputation. People forget controversies quickly if you keep winning. They also never stop bringing them up if your results start to slip. What's certain is that this debate has already left a mark. Every time someone talks about Olympic professionalism, celebrity culture, and where the line should be drawn, her name is coming up. For now, all eyes are on two stages: the ice in Milan Cortina and the screen in everyone's hands. How Jutta Leerdam chooses to move between those two spaces, and how well she performs when it counts.